I walked in and saw my family on the sofa. My husband, my mother, my son, and my own sister. "What's going on?" I asked, fearing the worst. "Mom, sit down," my son said. "You have to accept a new reality. You're not in charge of this family anymore. Aunt Bryn, she makes Dad happier now." I was furious. They all knew. I walked out of the room without saying a word. The next day, I had 118 missed calls. "Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here with me today. Before I start my story, I would love to know which city you're watching from. Please don't hesitate to share it in the comments. Now allow me to immerse you in this story. The wind coming off the tarmac at Atlanta Hartsfield-Jackson International was biting that night, the kind of cold that sneaks through your coat and settles in your bones. I had just landed after 3 exhausting days in New York City, saving a deal that my husband, Marcus, had nearly torpedoed with his arrogance. I was worn out. My eyes were burning from lack of sleep, and my shoulders ached from the weight of my laptop bag. All I wanted was a hot shower, a glass of red wine, and the comfort of my home. I wanted to tell Marcus that I had fixed his mess, that Sterling Ridge Realty, the real estate empire we had built over 22 years, was safe for another quarter. I pulled the car into the driveway of our estate in Buckhead. The living room lights were on, shining brightly against the dark, frost-covered lawn. It was odd. Usually by 10 o'clock at night, the house was silent. Marcus would be in his study, and our 21-year-old son, Jerome, would be in his room playing video games or with his friends. I opened the front door, dropping my keys into the bowl on the reception table. The silence that greeted me was not peaceful. It was heavy. It felt charged, like the air before a storm. "Hello?" I called out, hanging up my coat. "Marcus, Jerome, I'm home." "Simone, we're in the living room." My mother's voice came from the great room. My stomach tightened. My mother, Carol, lived 40 minutes away. What was she doing here on a Tuesday night? A sudden panic gripped me. Had something happened to my sister Bryn? Was someone sick? I rushed toward the living room, my heart hammering against my ribs, but it wasn't a medical emergency. It was a courtroom. They were all there, arranged on the designer leather sofa I had chosen last Christmas. Marcus was seated in the center, impeccably dressed in a white shirt, but he wouldn't meet my eyes. To his left was my mother, Carol, her posture stiff, her hands tightly clasped in her lap. To his right, Bryn, my younger sister, and in the adjacent armchair, my son, Jerome. The atmosphere was suffocating. No one was crying. No one looked sad. They looked resolute. "What is going on?" I asked, my breath catching. "Is everyone okay, Mom?" I took a step forward, but Jerome stood up. He didn't come to hug me. He stood planted, like a security guard blocking a door. He looked at me with eyes devoid of the warmth I had nurtured for 2 decades. "Mom, sit down," Jerome said. His voice was cold, deeper than I remembered, stripped of all affection. "You have to listen, and not make a scene." "A scene? Jerome, you're scaring me. What is this?" "You have to accept a new reality," he continued, reciting words that sounded rehearsed. "You're not in charge of this family anymore." I looked at Marcus. "Marcus, why aren't you saying anything?" Marcus finally looked up. His handsome face, the face that had been the public image of our company for years, twisted into a grimace of pity mixed with annoyance. "It's over, Simone. The farce is finished." "What farce?" I felt like I was drowning on dry land. "Aunt Bryn," Jerome said, pointing at my sister. "She makes Dad happier now. Unlike you, she understands him." The world stopped spinning. I looked at Bryn, my little sister, the one whose rent I had paid for 6 years, the one I had hired when no one else would give her a job. She was sitting cross-legged, wearing a silk blouse that looked suspiciously like one missing from my closet. And then I saw it. Marcus's hand rested casually, possessively, on Bryn's knee. "We didn't want you to find out from a stranger," my mother, Carol, interjected. Her voice was not apologetic, it was a lecture. "We wanted to do this as a family. Simone, you have to be realistic. You've been married to your job for years. Marcus is a man with needs. He needs a wife who is present, not a partner who sleeps with her laptop. Mom, I whispered, the betrayal cutting deeper than any knife. You knew? You're approving of this? I'm supporting happiness, Carol said, raising her chin defiantly. Bryn and Marcus share a connection. They love each other, Simone. It wasn't something they planned, it just happened. You can't punish them for falling in love. I looked at Bryn. She offered a small, triumphant smile. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear and looked down. On her finger, sparkling under the recessed lights, was a diamond ring. It wasn't a new ring. It was my ring. It was the antique Art Deco diamond Marcus had given me for our 20th anniversary, the one that had mysteriously disappeared from my jewelry box 6 months ago. I had turned the house upside down looking for it, crying for days. Marcus had told me I was careless, that I probably lost it at the gym. That's my ring, I said, my voice trembling with a rage so pure it felt hot in my throat. It looks better on her, Marcus said with a shrug. It was a waste on you. You never wear jewelry anyway. We want you to move out, Jerome said, breaking the silence again. Dad is keeping the house. I'm staying here. It's better if you leave. You create too much tension. My son, my baby, whom I had nursed through fevers, whose college tuition I paid by working 80 hours a week, was throwing me out of the house I built. Are you choosing this? I asked Jerome, tears finally stinging my eyes. Are you choosing the woman who sleeps with your father behind my back? That's your Aunt Jerome. She's not just my aunt anymore, Jerome spat out. She's the only one who actually listens to me. You just throw money at me and tell me to study. Dad and Bryn, they treat me like an adult. I looked at the 4 of them, my husband, my sister, my mother, my son, the 4 pillars of my life, and every one of them was rotten. They weren't just breaking my heart, they were dismantling my existence with a cruelty that took my breath away. I felt a wave of nausea, but I swallowed it down. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing me collapse. I wouldn't scream. I wouldn't beg. I straightened my back. I looked at Marcus, boring my eyes into his until he winced and looked away. You think you've won? I said, my voice quiet but deadly firm. You think you can rewrite history just because you're bored and selfish? Don't make a scene, Simone, Bryn said, her voice cloyingly sweet. Let's be mature about this divorce. Divorce? I let out a short, dry laugh. Oh, you have no idea what's coming. Don't threaten us, Marcus snapped, regaining his arrogance. I've already spoken to the lawyers. You're out. The prenuptial agreement, the company bylaws, I have it all covered. Get out that door, Simone. If you stay, I'll have security remove you from my property. Your property? I looked around the room. I chose every tile in this house. I paid for every brick. And now you're trespassing, Jerome said. That was it, the final break. I looked at my son one last time, memorizing the face of the stranger he had become. All right, I said. I turned. I didn't take my coat off the rack. I didn't pick up my keys from the bowl. I had my spare set in my pocket. I walked toward the door. Where are you going? Carol shouted, a sudden anxiety in her voice. Simone, we need to discuss the settlement. Marcus has a generous offer if you sign tonight. I didn't answer. I opened the heavy oak door and stepped out into the frosty Atlanta night. The wind hit my face, drying the tears before they could fall. I got into my car, the engine coming alive in the silence of the driveway. As I backed out, I saw them through the window. They were already pouring champagne. They were celebrating my elimination. I drove into the darkness, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew one thing for certain. The Simone they knew, the doormat, the provider, the fix-it-all, had died in that living room. And the woman driving away was someone they should fear, dearly. If you're listening to this and you're as furious as I was in that moment, please hit the like button and comment with the number 1 below. Let me know you're with me. Your support tells me I'm not alone in this fight. Comment 1 now because, believe me, what they did next makes this betrayal seem like just the warm-up. I drove for 1 hour, the city lights of Atlanta blurring into red and gold streaks through my windshield. My mind was a chaotic storm of images. Bryn's smirk, the ring on her finger, Jerome's cold stare. But beneath the shock, a primal instinct was activating. Survival. I needed gas. The low fuel light had been blinking since I left the airport, but I'd been too anxious to get home to stop. Now, on a desolate stretch of the I-285, I pulled into a 24-hour gas station. My hands were shaking as I stepped out into the bitter cold. I slid my Platinum credit card, the one linked to our joint account, the one I used for everything from grocery shopping to business dinners, into the pump. Processing, the screen blinked. Then in red letters, denied. Please see attendant. I frowned. It was impossible. The credit limit on that card was $50,000, and I had paid the balance in full 3 days ago. I tried again. Denied. A cold knot formed in my stomach, heavier than the betrayal I had just witnessed. I searched my purse and pulled out my personal debit card, the one linked to my checking account where my salary was deposited. I walked into the station. The clerk, a bored teenager with earbuds around his neck, didn't even look up as I placed a bottle of water and a pack of gum on the counter. I swiped the debit card. "No go," he mumbled, chewing his gum. "Try again," I said, my voice tight. "There's money in there." He sighed and swiped it one more time. "Denied, ma'am. Insufficient funds or blocked card. Got any cash?" I stood there, paralyzed under the harsh fluorescent lights. My banking app. I had to check my app. My fingers fumbled with my phone as I logged in. "Access denied. User authentication failure. Please contact your branch." I tried the company account. "Access denied." I tried the joint savings account. "Access denied." Marcus hadn't just thrown me out of the house. He had executed a financial kill switch. He had been planning this. You don't lock a co-owner out of business and personal accounts instantly unless you've prepped the ground with the bank, falsely alleging fraud or changing administrative privileges days in advance. He wanted me destitute. He wanted me stranded in the middle of the night without resources, so I would crawl back and sign whatever generous offer Carol had mentioned. I rummaged in my purse, past the useless plastic, down to the small zippered pocket at the bottom. I found 3 crumpled $20 bills and a handful of change. $60. That was my net worth right now. I paid for $20 worth of gas and the water with the cash. I got back in my car, trembling, not just from the cold, but from the terrifying realization of my vulnerability. I couldn't go to a hotel. I didn't have a credit card for the deposit. I couldn't go to my mother's house. I couldn't go to Bryn's. I drove until I found a roadside motel with a blinking neon sign that read, "Vacancy." It was one of those places where truckers sleep for a few hours, the kind of place where the sheets smell of stale smoke and regret. "Prepay," the night manager said through a reinforced glass pane. $50 for the night. I handed him $50 of my remaining $60. He slid a key through the tray. Room 12. The room was freezing. The heater rattled and spat out air that smelled of burnt dust. I sat on the edge of the sunken mattress, still in my expensive business suit, my coat pulled tightly around me. I looked at my phone. The screen was lit up with notifications. No apologies, no please come back. 118 missed calls. Most were from a number I recognized. Marcus's personal lawyer, a shark named Reginald Pierce. And then the emails started rolling in. Subject, marriage dissolution agreement. Subject, urgent, non-disclosure agreement required. Subject, termination notice, Sterling Ridge Realty. I opened the termination notice first. It was a PDF attached to an email from the HR director, a woman I had hired, a woman I had mentored. "Dear Fuentes," it read, "effective immediately, your position as Chief Operating Officer is terminated for cause, allegations of corporate espionage and gross negligence." I laughed, a harsh, rasping sound in the empty room. Espionage? Negligence? I was the one who stayed up until 3 a.m. auditing the books. I was the one who knew every zoning law in the county. Marcus didn't even know how to convert a PDF without asking for my help. And then a text message came through. It was from Jerome. My thumb hovered over the screen, a small, foolish part of me hoping he had run away, that he was sorry. Mom, don't make this harder. Dad says he'll cut off my tuition and trust fund if you fight the divorce. He's promised me the VP position next year if I stick with him. You always told me to be ambitious. I'm just doing what you taught me. Please understand. I dropped the phone on the bed as if it burned. That was the final erasure. Marcus hadn't just taken my money and my job. He had bought my son's soul. He had used the wealth I helped build to bribe my own child against me. I curled up on the grungy bedspread, knees pulled to my chest. The tears finally came, hot and fast. I cried for the baby I read bedtime stories to. I cried for the sister I protected on the playground. I cried for the husband I believed in when he was nothing but a smile in a cheap suit. But as the night wore on and the tears dried into salty crusts on my cheeks, something else began to settle in my chest. It was cold and heavy, like a stone. They thought they had erased me. They thought that by taking away my credit cards and passwords, they had taken my power. They forgot one thing. They forgot who built the castle they were sitting in. They forgot who designed the security systems, who drafted the contracts, and who knew where the bodies were buried. Marcus thought Sterling Ridge Realty ran on his charm. He was about to learn that it ran on my brain, and while he might have stolen the front door keys, he had forgotten that the architect always leaves a back door. I stared at the water stain on the ceiling, waiting for the sun to rise. I was no longer Simone the wife. I was no longer Simone the mother. I was Simone the architect, and I was about to tear the whole house down. Sleep was impossible in that motel room. The highway traffic noise was a constant drone, but it was the noise in my head that kept me awake. Sharp, jagged memories played on a loop. To understand why I was lying on a filthy mattress with $10 in my pocket, I had to backtrack. I had to look at the foundation of my life and realize it had been cracked from the start. I grew up in a small town in rural Alabama, the eldest of 2 daughters. My father died when I was 7 years old, leaving my mother, Carol, to raise us alone. His death broke something in her, or perhaps it just revealed who she truly was. She was a woman who needed to be adored, to be the center of attention, and she projected that need onto her daughters, or rather, onto one of them. Bryn was born beautiful, even as a baby. She had golden curls and big blue eyes that made strangers stop on the street. I was plain, brown hair, serious eyes, sturdy. I was the responsible one. Bryn was the princess. I remember the day I turned 18. I had just received my acceptance letter to Wharton Business School and a partial scholarship. It was my ticket out. I had worked 3 part-time jobs all through high school, tutoring, waitressing, shelving books at the library, to save up for the rest of the tuition. I ran into the kitchen waving the letter. "Mom, I got in!" Carol was at the table painting Bryn's fingernails. Bryn was 12 then, already demanding and petulant. "That's nice, Simone," my mother said without looking up. "But keep your voice down. Bryn has a headache." "But Mom, it's Wharton. It's a business degree." Carol sighed, finally looking at me. Her eyes weren't filled with pride. They were calculating. "Simone, honey, we need to talk about that money you've saved." "My college fund?" "Well, Bryn has been discovered. There's a modeling contest in Miami next month. It could be her big break, but the fees, the travel, the portfolio shots, it's expensive." My heart sank. "Mom, that's my tuition money. I earned it." "How selfish you are, Simone," Bryn intervened, blowing on her wet nails. "You don't want me to be famous." "I'll buy you a car when I'm rich, Simone," my mother said, her voice taking on that tone, the one that mixed guilt with a command. "You're the strong one. You're smart. You can always find a way. You can work another year, go to night classes, but Bryn, she's delicate. This is her dream. You wouldn't want to crush your sister's dream, would you? Families sacrifice for each other." I gave them the money. Of course I did. I had been conditioned for 18 years to believe that my value lay solely in what I could provide for them. I was the workhorse, the mule, the fixer. Bryn was the golden child, the star, the one who deserved to shine. Bryn went to Miami. She wasn't hired. She spent the money on clothes and theme parks. I spent the next year working double shifts at a restaurant to earn the money back. I started college a year late, exhausted but determined. That dynamic never changed. It just evolved. When I graduated at the top of my class, my mother didn't come to the ceremony because Bryn had severe anxiety over a 2-week breakup with a boyfriend. I walked across the stage alone. When I got my first big promotion at a financial consulting firm, my mother said, "That's great, honey. Hey, can you loan Bryn $2,000? Her landlord is being awful." I paid Bryn's rent. I paid for her car repairs. I paid for her acting classes she never attended. I bought my mother a condo so she wouldn't have to worry about stairs. I thought I was buying their love. I thought if I just gave enough, worked enough, fixed enough problems, they would finally look at me the way they looked at Bryn. I thought one day my mother would look at my face and say, "I'm so proud of you, Simone. You are my joy." But I was never her joy. I was her electric bill. I was her safety net. And then I met Marcus. He was charming, ambitious, and seemed to see me. He told me I was brilliant. He told me I was beautiful. I didn't realize then that he had the same calculating look in his eyes as my mother. He didn't see a soulmate. He saw a host. He saw a woman trained to give everything and ask for nothing in return. He fit perfectly into the empty space in my heart that my mother and sister had hollowed out. I married him, thinking I was building a new family, a better family. Lying in the dark motel room, the revelation hit me with the force of a physical blow. I hadn't escaped my family dynamic by marrying Marcus. I had recreated it. Marcus was the golden child, demanding adoration and resources. I was still the workhorse, toiling in the shadows to keep the lights on. And Bryn was just the inevitable conclusion. The two parasites in my life had finally found each other. "You're the strong one, Simone." My mother's voice echoed in my memory. Well, she was right about one thing. I was strong enough to carry them for 40 years. And now, God help them, I was strong enough to let go. I sat up on the bed, the metal spring squeaking. I wasn't going to cry anymore. The sadness was gone, replaced by a cold, clinical clarity. They wanted delicate Bryn. They wanted dreamer Marcus. Fine, they could have each other, but they couldn't have my money. They couldn't have my company. I picked up my laptop bag. It was time to stop being the sacrificing daughter. It was time to be the CEO who liquidates toxic assets. The morning sun filtered through the motel room's dirty curtains, casting long, dusty shadows on the floor. I opened my laptop. Thankfully, I had a portable Wi-Fi hotspot in my bag, a habit from years of business travel. Marcus couldn't cut off a device he didn't know existed. I didn't try to log into the bank accounts yet. I knew those doors were shut tight. Instead, I opened a file called SR File 1. To understand how I was going to destroy Marcus, you have to understand how I built him. I met Marcus 22 years ago at a real estate networking event in downtown Atlanta. He was 29, wearing a suit that didn't quite fit, holding a glass of cheap wine, and holding court with a group of investors. He was electric. He had a smile that could sell ice to an Eskimo, a laugh that made you feel like the funniest person in the world. I was 25, a junior analyst at one of the big consulting firms, standing in a corner clutching my binder of market studies. I watched him move across the room. He was charismatic, yes, but I could hear what he was saying. He was spouting jargon, making promises about returns that were mathematically impossible. He cornered me by the buffet. "Looks like you're analyzing the structural integrity of the shrimp skewers," he quipped. "No," I smiled. "I'm analyzing your pitch to those investors. You're promising a 15% return on a property in a declining district. You're going to lose them their money." He blinked in surprise. Then he laughed. "Okay, you caught me. I'm a big ideas guy, not a numbers guy. I need someone who understands the boring stuff." "The boring stuff is what keeps you out of jail," I said dryly. He fell in love with me, or at least with what I could do for him, right then and there. Within 6 months, we were married. In 1 year, we founded Sterling Ridge Realty. The division of labor was established immediately. Marcus was the face. He was the CEO. He took the client meetings, golfed with developers, and gave interviews to the Wall Street Journal and Forbes. He loved the spotlight. He loved the title. I was the architect. I was the chief operating officer. But in reality, I was everything else. I sourced the properties, negotiated the loans, managed the contractors, fought with City Hall over zoning licenses, did the taxes, payroll, and legal compliance. Our first big project was a disaster waiting to happen. Marcus had bought a dilapidated warehouse in South Atlanta, convinced it would be the next big loft conversion. He paid $500,000 too much. The contractor he hired ran off with the deposit. We were on the verge of bankruptcy before we had even sold a single unit. I remember sitting at our kitchen table, pregnant with Jerome, staring at the red numbers in the ledger. Marcus paced, sweating through his shirt, panicking. "We're finished, Simone. My reputation is ruined. I'm going to be sued." "Sit down," I commanded. I took my grandmother's jewelry, the only inheritance I had received, safe from my mother and Bryn, and sold it. I liquidated my retirement fund. I renegotiated terms with the bank, presenting a business plan so detailed, so bulletproof, that the branch manager said it was the best he had ever seen. I fired Marcus's friend, who was acting as project manager, and took over site supervision myself, walking through construction zones with a hard hat and a 6-month bump. We finished the project. We sold out in 3 weeks. Marcus was hailed as a visionary in the business press. The headline read, "Marcus Sterling, the new king of lofts." He brought the magazine home, beaming. "Look at this, baby, we did it." He didn't mention me in the interview once. When I gently pointed it out, he kissed me on the forehead. "Honey, you know how the media is. They like a single narrative. Plus, you hate the spotlight. You're my secret weapon, the power behind the throne." I accepted it. I told myself it was for the family. I told myself that as long as the company succeeded, it didn't matter whose face was on the cover. I was a fool. For 20 years, I built the stage, set the lights, and wrote the script. Marcus just walked out and took the applause. The company grew. We expanded into commercial properties, luxury condos, mixed-use developments. We were worth millions. But the company's structure, that was my masterpiece. Marcus was lazy with details. He hated reading contracts. He hated passwords. "You fix it, Simone," was his favorite phrase. So I set up the digital infrastructure, created the intricate web of LLCs to limit liability, configured the automated bank transfers, and because Marcus was paranoid about employees stealing from him, he insisted on a localized, highly encrypted internal server for our most sensitive financial data. He wanted a ghost access, a master administrator login that could bypass all other protocols in case we ever got locked out or held hostage by IT staff. "Only you and I will know the ghost access," he had said. But Marcus never bothered to memorize the complex 64-character string I generated. He wrote it on a Post-it, kept it in his desk drawer for a week, and then threw it away, assuming I would always be there to type it for him. He was right. I was always there, until yesterday. Now, sitting in the motel, I looked at the login screen for the private Sterling Ridge server. The VPN tunnel was secure. Marcus thought that calling the bank and removing me as a signatory had cut off my access. He thought that firing me through HR had revoked my access. He relied on standard protocols. He relied on the front door. He forgot about the ghost access. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I typed the string of characters. It was a verse from a poem I loved, mixed with the GPS coordinates of the first building we bought and the date Jerome lost his first tooth. Marcus knew none of those things. Authenticating. Access granted. Administrator level. The screen flooded with data. The entire nervous system of Sterling Ridge Realty was open before me. Emails, wire transfers, ledger records, tax documents, private chat histories. I wasn't just looking at a company, I was looking at the crime scene of my marriage. I started downloading. I didn't want just a few files. I wanted everything. Every email Marcus had sent in the last 5 years, every expense report, every wire transfer to the Cayman Islands or Switzerland. And that's when I saw it, a folder labeled Project B. It wasn't a construction project. The B stood for Bryn. I opened the folder, and the blood ran cold in my veins. This wasn't just an affair. This was large-scale embezzlement. Dates, amounts, receipts. January 12th, transfer of $50,000 to Bryn Consulting LLC, Bryn's maiden name. February 14th, $12,000 at Tiffany & Coton, March 1st. $4,500 for monthly rent of a luxury suite at the St. Regis. He had been keeping Bryn as a concubine with company money for 3 years, but it went even deeper. I saw transfers to a phantom company I didn't recognize, Orion Holdings Group. The signatory for Orion wasn't Marcus. It was Bryn. And the assets being transferred into Orion weren't just cash. They were deeds. Marcus was slowly transferring the titles of our most valuable, unencumbered properties into a company owned by my sister. He was gutting Sterling Ridge Realty, preparing to leave me with the empty shell, while he and Bryn walked away with the assets. I felt sick. This wasn't just replacing me as a wife, this was grand larceny. But as I scrolled through the documents, a cold smile touched my lips. Marcus was an actor, not an architect. He didn't understand the paperwork he was signing. In his arrogance and Bryn's greed, they had made mistakes. Amateur, sloppy mistakes. They had forged my signature on the deed transfers. I could see it in the PDFs, a clumsy digital copy of my signature from a different document. And in Orion Holdings Group's operating agreement, Bryn had listed her permanent address. It was my address, the house I paid for. I had them dead to rights. But I couldn't strike yet. If I went to the police now, Marcus would claim it was an administrative error. He would pay a fine and bury me in litigation for years. He had the money for expensive lawyers. I had $10. I didn't need to let them hang themselves. I needed them to feel safe. I needed them to think I was defeated, ruined, and hiding in a hole. I closed the laptop. I had the blueprints for their destruction. Now I just needed to build the trap. The digital evidence of Project B burned in my mind, forcing me to recall exactly how Bryn had infiltrated my sanctuary. It began 5 years ago, a time when Sterling Ridge Realty was booming and my guard was down. Bryn had just gone through her 3rd divorce. Her ex-husband, a decent mechanic named Derek, left her because she refused to work and spent his salary on designer bags she couldn't afford. She showed up on my doorstep with 2 suitcases and a tearful story that would have won an Oscar. "He was abusive, Simone," she cried, throwing herself into my arms. I later learned abusive meant he had cut off her credit card. "I have nowhere to go. Mom said you would help me." Carol called me 10 minutes later. "Simone, you have that big house with all those empty guest rooms. Let your sister stay for a few weeks. She just needs to recover. Family helps family." I agreed. I always agreed. 1 week turned into 6 months. Bryn spent her days by my pool, drinking my wine and critiquing my landscapers. Marcus, at the time, seemed annoyed by her presence. "She's a leech, Simone," he complained. "She treats our house like a hotel." I defended her. "She's grieving, Marcus. Give her time." Then came the request. "I need a job," Bryn announced one night at dinner. "I'm bored. I want to work for you guys." I nearly choked. "Bryn, we run a commercial real estate firm. It's high pressure. What skills do you have for this?" "I'm good with people," she insisted. "I can be, I don't know, client relations. I can organize the parties. I can talk to investors. You two are so serious. You need someone fun." "No," I said. It was one of the few times I put my foot down. But Carol intervened. She drove 40 minutes to have coffee with me. "Simone, this is Bryn's chance to be responsible. If you don't give her a job, she'll flounder. Do you want her living on your sofa forever? Give her a salary. Let her move out." "Marcus thinks it's a good idea," she added smoothly. I blinked. "Marcus?" "I talked to him," Carol said. "He thinks Bryn could help soften the company image. You know, you can be a little intense, honey." I confronted Marcus. "You want to hire Bryn?" Marcus shrugged. adjusting his tie. Your mother's right. We need someone to handle the social side. The galas, the charity events. You hate that stuff. Let her do it. Pay her an assistant's salary. Get her out of the house. We all win. So I did. I created a position. Director of Special Events. At first it seemed to work. Bryn moved into an apartment I subsidized and organized the company Christmas party. It was lavish, over budget, but a success. Then the subtle shifts began. Bryn started coming into the office every day, dressed not in business attire, but in tight dresses that were just on the edge of inappropriate. She spent hours in Marcus's office discussing event logistics. I'd walk past and hear them laughing. Whenever I entered the room, they would stop. "What's so funny?" I'd ask, feeling a prickle of unease. "Just a joke about a client," Bryn would say, smiling that saccharine smile. "You wouldn't get it, Simone. It's an inside joke." She started joining us for business lunches. Then she started replacing me at them. "Simone, you stay back and finish the quarterly projections," Marcus would say. "Bryn and I will take the developers to the steakhouse. You know you hate small talk." And I did hate small talk. I loved the work, so I let them go. I stayed at the office, eating a salad at my desk, running the numbers, making sure our profit margins were healthy, while my husband and my sister drank martinis and laughed at my expense. I noticed changes in Marcus. He started dressing younger. He bought a Porsche he didn't need. He started staying out late for networking. When I voiced my concern, Carol gaslit me to infinity. "You're being paranoid, Simone," she scolded. "You should be glad Marcus and Bryn get along. Most men hate their in-laws. It's a blessing. Don't ruin it with your jealousy. It's beneath you." Jealousy. She made me feel like a crazy, insecure harpy. Now looking at the Project B folder on my laptop, I saw the reality. The networking dinners were dates. The business trips to Miami were vacations. And the consulting fees paid to Bryn were actually her allowance for being his mistress. The snake hadn't just slithered into the grass. I had opened the door, invited her in, and given her warm milk. And the worst part? My mother had held the door open. Carol had brokered this. She had pushed Bryn toward Marcus, knowing exactly what Bryn was capable of. She wanted Bryn to have the life I built, because in her twisted mind, Bryn deserved the kingdom, and I was just the builder, destined to raise it and walk away. I slammed my hand against the cheap motel desk. The pain anchored me to reality. "Okay," I whispered to the empty room. "You want to play the fun, irresponsible game? Let's see how much fun it is when the architect pulls the load-bearing wall." I spent the next 6 hours in a trance of forensic accounting. The ghost access gave me everything, but I had to be careful. If I made any changes, if I altered any file, the system logs could alert the IT director, a man named Steven, who used to be loyal to me but now undoubtedly answered to Marcus. So I became a ghost. I copied, I downloaded, I screenshotted, I traced the flow of money. It was worse than I thought. Sterling Ridge Realty was hemorrhaging money to fund their lifestyle and the transfers to Bryn's shell company. Marcus had stopped paying vendors. We were 3 months behind on payments to the construction crews for the new skyscraper in the financial district. We were in default on the interest for 2 major loans. Marcus was robbing Peter to pay Bryn. My company, my life's work, was a house of cards. If the creditors found out, we would be insolvent in 30 days. But then, I found something that made me sit bolt upright. It was an email chain between Marcus and a private investigator called Pierce Investigations. The date was 2 years ago. Subject, surveillance, target, S. Dubois. Marcus, I need dirt, whatever it is. Infidelity, substance abuse, mental instability. I need grounds to void the prenuptial. Pierce, Mr. Sterling, we followed her for 6 months. She goes to work. She goes to the grocery store. She goes to her mother's house. She works late. There's no dirt. The woman is a saint. Marcus, look harder or invent something. I can't afford to give her half. I stopped breathing. 2 years. He had been planning to get rid of me for 2 years, but he couldn't find a way to do it without losing money. And then a more recent email, dated 1 week ago. Marcus, forget the dirt. We go with the mental collapse angle. Her family will testify. Her mother and sister are on board. We'll claim she's overworked, paranoid, unfit to lead. We'll force a motion of no confidence at the board meeting. Once she's out, we trigger the buyout clause at the lowest valuation. Carol. I can testify that she's been erratic lately, very emotional. I'm worried about her, Marcus. We need to do what's best for the company. I stared at the screen, the tears of rage blurring my vision. My mother, my own mother, was conspiring to have me declared mentally unstable so her golden child could steal my husband and my money. You want erratic? I murmured. I'll show you erratic. I dug deeper. I needed leverage. The evidence of fraud was good, but it would take time to prove in court. I needed something immediate, something that would terrify Marcus. I found it in the tax filings. Last year, to secure a massive loan from a private equity firm, Marcus had inflated the occupancy rates of our commercial properties. He had forged lease agreements. He had physically falsified the signatures of tenants who didn't exist. This wasn't just civil fraud. This was bank fraud. This was a federal felony with prison time, and the loan documents were signed by Marcus Sterling, CEO. My signature wasn't on them. I had been out of town for my aunt's funeral that week, a funeral Bryn skipped, and Marcus had said he would handle the paperwork. He had signed his own death warrant and didn't even know it. I copied the loan documents. I copied the fake leases. I built a dossier that was a nuclear bomb. I looked at the clock. It was 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I had been working non-stop for 12 hours. I was starving. I hadn't washed, and I was running on adrenaline. I needed a burner phone. I couldn't use my cell. They were probably tracking it or pulling the records. I walked to a convenience store across the street, buying a cheap prepaid phone with cash. Back in the room, I sat on the bed and looked at the new phone. Who could I call? My friends? Most were shared couple friends with Marcus. They would probably side with charming Marcus or remain neutral. My family? Obviously not. My employees? Too risky. I needed someone powerful, someone who hated Marcus, someone with the resources to wage a war. One man popped into my head, Elijah Vance. Elijah was a billionaire real estate magnate in Atlanta. Old money, ruthless, but principled. 3 years ago, Marcus had beaten Elijah for a prime land acquisition in the Beltline development. Marcus had won by bribing a city councilman to rezone the land, a move I had fiercely opposed, but which Marcus did behind my back. Elijah had suspected foul play. He had publicly called Marcus a cheap-suited climber. Marcus had laughed it off, but Elijah never forgot. If I went to Elijah Vance with proof of Marcus's fraud, specifically the fraud that had cost Elijah that deal, it was a long shot. Elijah might just laugh at me. He might turn me away. But he was the only person in Atlanta with enough power to shield me from Marcus's legal team. I dialed the number for Vance Enterprises. I knew it by heart. I had looked it up enough times when we were rivals. Vance Enterprises, office of the chairman, a crisp voice answered. I need to speak to Mr. Vance immediately. Mr. Vance is in meetings. May I ask what this is regarding? Tell him it's Simone Dubois, I said. Tell him I know how Marcus Sterling got the Beltline acquisition rezoned, and tell him I have the emails. There was a pause. 1 moment, please. 30 seconds later, a deep, gravelly voice was on the line. Mrs. Dubois, to what do I owe the pleasure? Did your husband send you to gloat? My husband just fired me, drained my bank accounts, and put his mistress in my house, I said, my voice steady. I'm not here to gloat, Mr. Vance. I'm here to burn him to ashes, and I thought you might want to bring the marshmallows. Silence, then a low chuckle. I'm listening. Before I went to meet Elijah Vance, there was one more wound I had to cauterize, a file I'd been avoiding in the Sterling Ridge database, Jerome's trust fund. Jerome was my soft spot, my Achilles heel. I had protected him from Marcus's narcissism his entire life. When Marcus forgot Jerome's birthday, I bought the gift and signed Marcus's name. When Marcus missed Jerome's soccer games, I told Jerome that Dad was working hard for our future. I had raised him to believe his father was a hero, covering up the reality that his father was a negligent egotist. Now I realized that was my biggest mistake. I had protected Jerome from the truth, and in doing so, I had allowed Marcus to buy his loyalty with lies. I opened the trust fund documents. Marcus had recently modified the terms. Originally, the fund was to be paid out at age 25, conditional upon college graduation. The new terms, dated 2 weeks ago, immediate access to a $200,000 cash distribution, transfer of title for the 2023 Porsche 911, and the attached correspondence. Jerome: Dad, Mom is going to flip if I drop out next semester. Marcus: Mom isn't going to be in charge much longer, Jay. She treats you like a child. I treat you like a man. You want the car? You want the cash? You just have to back me up when the time comes. You have to tell the lawyers Mom has been acting strange, that she's unstable. Jerome: Well, she has been kind of stressed lately. Marcus: Exactly, she's losing it. We have to protect the company. If you stick with me, I'll make you VP of Acquisitions next year, no degree needed. You can learn on the job like I did. Jerome: VP? Seriously? Okay, I'm in. What do I have to do? I read the words, and my heart didn't just break. It turned to dust. VP of Acquisitions. Jerome was failing Intro to Economics. He spent his weekends playing video games and sleeping until noon. He wasn't qualified to run a lemonade stand, let alone a department in a multi-million-dollar company. Marcus was setting him up to fail, stroking his ego to use him as a pawn against me. And Jerome, my sweet boy, had sold his mother out for a Porsche and a title he hadn't earned. I remembered the text he sent me last night. Dad says he'll cut off my tuition. He wasn't worried about tuition. He was worried about easy money. I pulled up Jerome's credit card statement, the one I paid. Liquor store, nightclub, online gambling, club, strip club. He was in a downward spiral, and instead of parenting him, Marcus was funding that spiral to buy an ally. I picked up my burner phone, hesitating. He was my son, but the boy who sat on that sofa and told me to accept reality wasn't the boy I raised. He was his father's creation. If I continued to cushion his fall, I would lose him forever to Marcus's world of corruption and superficiality. The only way to truly save him was to let him crash. I typed a text message. I didn't send it yet. I just wrote it, staring at the cursor. Jerome, I saw the emails. I saw the car. You chose the easy way, but the easy way is a trap. When your father is done using you, he will discard you just like me. I love you enough to let you learn this the hard way. Good luck, Mr. Vice President. I saved the draft. I dried my eyes. I navigated to the payroll system. I removed Jerome from the intern payroll he had been on for 3 years, despite never stepping foot in the office. I couldn't touch the trust fund. Marcus controlled it now, but I could touch the health insurance. Jerome was on my policy, the policy I paid for personally. Remove dependent, Jerome Sterling. Reason, no longer a full-time student. It was petty, it was small, but it was the first time in 21 years I hadn't fixed something for him. My phone vibrated. It was the address for the meeting with Elijah Vance, the Peachtree Club, Library Lounge in 1 hour. Come alone. I closed the laptop, went to the bathroom, and splashed cold water on my face. I tried to fix my hair. My suit was wrinkled, but I shook it out. I applied a layer of lipstick, my armor. I looked in the mirror. The woman looking back looked tired, yes, but she looked dangerous. She looked like a mother who had lost her cubs and had nothing left to lose. You want instability, Marcus? I told my reflection. I'm going to show you an earthquake. I walked into the Peachtree Club in the same wrinkled suit I had fled my house in, carrying a laptop bag that contained enough evidence to send my husband to a federal correctional institution. The doorman eyed me skeptically. This place smelled of old money, old grudges, and mahogany, a world Elijah Vance ruled. I found him in the library lounge, sitting in a leather armchair reading the Financial Times. He was 65, silver-haired, and had eyes like polished flint. He didn't stand when I approached. Mrs. Dubois, Elijah said, folding his newspaper, you look terrible. I feel terrible, I admitted, sinking into the chair opposite him, but my brain is working perfectly. You mentioned the Beltline deal. Elijah cut to the chase. "You said you had proof." I opened my laptop. I didn't waste time on pleasantries. I pulled up the dossier I had compiled in the motel room. I turned the screen toward him. 3 years ago, Marcus beat you for the Beltline lot. You suspected he bribed City Councilman Davis. You were right. Elijah leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "Here's the wire transfer," I said, pointing at the screen. $50,000 to a shell company called Davis Management. And here are the emails between Marcus and Davis discussing the expedited rezoning fee. Marcus was sloppy. He used his personal email for initial contact. Elijah scrutinized the documents. His expression didn't change, but the air around him seemed to grow colder. "Why are you showing me this now? You were the COO. You benefited from this deal." "I didn't know," I said, my voice steady. "Marcus kept a parallel set of books. I found it last night after he threw me out of my house, froze my accounts, and put my sister in my bed." Elijah looked up, a flicker of surprise crossing his face. "His sister and my mother is cheering them on," I added, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. "It's a full-on family reunion, and I'm the only one not invited." I took a breath. "Mr. Vance, I didn't come here to gossip. I came here to make a deal. Marcus is trying to destroy me. He has forged my signature on fraudulent loans. He is embezzling company funds. He's going to leave Sterling Ridge Realty a smoking crater. Do you want me to save it?" Elijah raised an eyebrow. "I want you to help me bury him. And in exchange, I will give you the Beltline property." Continue. "Marcus is over-leveraged. He's cash poor. He's about to default on construction loans. If you step in now as a white knight investor, offering a bridge loan to save the project, he'll take it. He's desperate. And in the loan contract, we embed a guarantee clause. If he defaults, which he will because I know the real numbers, you get the assets, specifically the Beltline deed." Elijah stared at me for a long moment. The silence stretched, thick and tense. Then a slow smile spread across his face. It wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of a predator recognizing another predator. "You are vengeful, aren't you?" Elijah said softly. "I'm efficient," I corrected. "Marcus thinks I'm a scorned wife who will cry in a corner. He doesn't realize that I'm the one who wrote his business plan." Elijah closed my laptop and pushed it back to me. "I like you, Simone. You have grit. Marcus always struck me as a peacock, all feathers, no flight. But you're a hawk." He pulled out his phone. "I'm calling my general counsel. He's the best litigator in Atlanta. He will represent you in the divorce, pro bono. Consider it an investment in our new partnership." "Thank you," I whispered, the relief flooding me. "And Simone," Elijah added, his eyes hard, "don't disappoint me. If we do this, we destroy him completely. No mercy. No taking him back when he cries." "He won't be crying," I said, thinking of Marcus's smirk when he took my ring. "He'll be screaming." Elijah nodded. "Good. Now let's get you a hotel room that doesn't charge by the hour. You can't plan a war if you haven't slept." That night, I slept in a suite at the St. Regis Atlanta, paid for by Vance Enterprises. I took a long bath, scrubbing the motel grime from my skin. As I lay between the clean, cool sheets, I felt a deep shift inside me. For 20 years, I had been the fixer. I had smoothed over Marcus's mistakes, cleaned up his messes, made him look good. I had been the invisible glue holding everything together. Now, I was going to be the solvent. I was going to dissolve everything he thought he owned. I picked up my burner phone and sent Elijah a one-word text. "Ready." 3 days later, the trap was set. Elijah's lawyer, a terrifyingly calm man named Wesley Thorne, had drafted the divorce settlement. It was a masterpiece of legal misdirection. On the surface, it looked like a complete surrender. The proposal: Marcus keeps the family home. Marcus keeps full ownership of Sterling Ridge Realty. Simone receives a one-time lump sum of $500,000, a fraction of what I was due. Simone waives all claim to future alimony. It looked like I was giving up. It looked like I was broken, desperate for cash, and just wanted to run. Marcus would love it. It fed his ego perfectly. But buried deep in the 60-page document, in Section 14, subsection C, paragraph 4, was the poison pill clause. In the event that either party to this agreement is found to have engaged in undisclosed criminal activity, fraud, or embezzlement during the marriage, or is convicted of a felony within 24 months of signing, this agreement in its entirety shall be null and void. In such event, all assets, including 100% of company stock and real property, shall revert to the non-offending party as punitive damages. Marcus never read the fine print. He paid lawyers to do that, but his lawyer, Reginald Pierce, was lazy. I knew because I used to pay his invoices. Pierce would skim the contracts, look for the big numbers, the settlement, the alimony. He wouldn't look for a specific reversion clause buried in generic liability text. I met Marcus and his lawyer at Pierce's office. I wore no makeup. I wore an old sweater. I kept my head down, staring at the floor. I needed to sell the image of the defeated woman. Marcus strode in like he owned the world. He wore a new Italian suit and smelled of expensive cologne, probably a gift from Bryn. "Well, look who crawled out of her hole," Marcus sneered as he sat down. "I hope you're ready to sign, Simone. Bryn and I have wedding invitations to order." "Just give me the check," I said in a trembling voice. "I just want to leave, Marcus. I can't fight you anymore." Marcus laughed, looking at Pierce. "See? I told you she'd surrender. She has no stomach for this." Pierce slid the papers across the table. "Standard agreement, Simone. You walk away with $500,000 and a clean slate. Just sign here, here, and here." I picked up the pen. My hand was shaking, partly acting, partly pure adrenaline. "What about Jerome?" I asked softly. "Jerome is staying with me," Marcus said, leaning back in his chair. "He's my vice president now. We're going to build an empire together without your constant nagging." I felt a sharp pang in my chest, but I swallowed it. "Okay, take care of him." "Sign the damn papers, Simone." I signed my name on the line that seemingly stripped me of 20 years of hard work. Then Marcus signed. He did it with a flourish, a large, arrogant M. "Done," Pierce said, closing the folder. "The check will be wired to your account tomorrow." Marcus stood up and buttoned his jacket. He gave me a smirk that sent chills down my spine. "You know, Simone, you should thank me. You were always too uptight for this life. Go live on a farm or something. Find yourself a nice librarian." "Goodbye, Marcus," I whispered. As I walked toward the elevator, I heard Marcus laughing with Pierce. "That was easier than I thought. She didn't even ask for the beach house." The elevator doors closed, cutting off his laughter. I leaned against the metal wall and let out a long, slow breath. I had signed. The poison pill was active. Now, all I had to do was prove the fraud. And I already had the evidence. I just needed the right stage to present it. And what better stage than the wedding? Marcus and Bryn had announced the date. It was in 3 weeks. A rushed wedding, they called it. They wanted to be legitimized before the spring gala season. 3 weeks. That was my timeline. I stepped out of the building and into Elijah's chauffeured car. "Did he sign?" Elijah asked from the back seat. "He signed," I said, a genuine smile finally breaking through. "He thinks he bought my silence for $500,000. He just signed over his entire life." Elijah poured me a glass of sparkling water. "To the architect. To the demolition," I replied. The next 3 weeks were an exercise in masochism. I had to remain invisible while Marcus and Bryn paraded their victory all over Atlanta. I rented a small, discreet apartment in the North End using my maiden name. I spent my days with Elijah's forensic accountants, building the case. We were turning the raw data I had stolen into a legal sledgehammer. Every night, I tortured myself by checking social media. Bryn's Instagram was a spew of luxury. A photo of a new convertible Mercedes. "My future hubby spoils me." #blessed, #new beginnings. A photo of my dining room redecorated with tacky gold wallpaper. Out with the old, in with the glam. Finally making this house a home. That hurt, watching her erase my touch from the home I built. But the most painful posts came from my mother. Carol posted a picture of the three of them, Marcus, Bryn, and herself, toasting with champagne flutes at a tasting menu dinner. The caption, "Finally a family that knows how to enjoy life. So proud of my beautiful daughter Bryn and my wonderful son-in-law Marcus. True love always wins. True love." She had sold her eldest daughter out for a seat at a fancy table. And Jerome. Jerome was silent on social media, but I saw the credit card alerts on the secondary accounts I still monitored, the ones Marcus hadn't found yet. The Nobleman's Liquor, $400. Capital Nightclub, $10,000. Bail bonds, $500. My son was in a freefall. Marcus wasn't raising him, he was indulging him. I wanted to rush in and save him, but Elijah stopped me. "You can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved, Simone," Elijah told me softly. He chose his side. Let him see what that side truly looks like when the lights go out. I knew he was right, but it felt like cutting off a limb. Meanwhile, the company was rotting from the inside. My spies, Sarah in accounting and Jason in project management, gave me daily updates. "Marcus hasn't been in the office past 2 p.m. in weeks," Sarah wrote. "He's letting Bryn plan the company's rebrand. She wants to change the logo to pink and gold." Pink and gold, Simone. For a commercial real estate firm. "Contractors are threatening to walk off the Highland site," Jason reported. "Marcus said the check is in the mail. It's not. He used the construction money to pay for the wedding venue." "Let it burn," I told them. "Just document everything. Save the email where he tells you to delay payments." The wedding was going to be at the St. Regis, in the Grand Ballroom. It was the most expensive venue in the city. Bryn had invited 300 people, investors, politicians, local celebrities. They wanted to cement their status as Atlanta's new power couple. They wanted an audience. Good, I thought, looking at the invitation Sarah had secured for me. "You want a spectacle? I'll give you a spectacle." 2 days before the wedding, I got one last piece of leverage. It came from an unexpected source. My phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello, Simone? It's Derek." Derek, Bryn's ex-husband, the mechanic she had bled dry. "Derek," I said, surprised. "How are you?" I'm okay. Look, I heard what happened, what they did to you. It's disgusting. I got something," Derek said, lowering his voice. "When Bryn left me, she left a box of papers in the garage. I was going to burn them, but I looked through them last night. Simone, she has credit cards in your name from 3 years ago." "What?" "She opened them when she was staying with you. She intercepted the mail. She maxed them out and then hid the statements. But I found the collection agency letters, and I found a letter from Marcus." "From Marcus?" "Yeah. He paid one of the cards off. The letter says, 'I covered this one. But you have to be more careful. If Simone sees this on her credit report, we're both dead. Stick to the plan. 2 more years, and we take it all.'" 2 more years. The timeline fit perfectly. Marcus had been conspiring with my sister to steal my identity and my money while I was feeding her and giving her a job. "Derek," I said, my voice trembling, "can you bring me that box?" "I'm on my way," he said. When Derek handed me that box, I felt the last lock click into place. This wasn't just fraud, it was a predatory conspiracy, calculated and evil. I looked at the handwritten letter from Marcus. 2 more years, and we take it all. I locked the letter in my safe. "Thank you, Derek," I said. "Give 'em hell, Simone," he said with a grim smile. "Oh, I plan to," I replied. "I plan to give them the whole damned hell." The day before the wedding, I did something dangerous. I went to see Jerome. I knew I shouldn't. Elijah advised against it, but I was a mother first and a vengeful ex-wife second. I needed to give him one last chance to get off the sinking ship. I waited outside his new penthouse, the one Marcus bought with company funds. At 11 a.m., Jerome stumbled out, looking hungover. He wore designer sunglasses and a sweatshirt that cost more than my first car. "Jerome!" I called. He jumped, spinning around. When he saw me, his face hardened. "Mom, what are you doing here? Are you stalking me now?" "I'm not stalking you. I'm trying to save you." I don't need saving, he spat, walking toward his Porsche. I'm doing great. Dad just put me in charge of the Southern Region portfolio. Jerome, listen to me, I said, stepping into his path. Your father is lying to you. The company is bankrupt. He's stealing money to pay for this lifestyle. He's using you as a shield. When the feds come, and they are coming, your name is on the documents. Jerome laughed. It was a hollow, brittle sound. You're just jealous. You're jealous because Dad is winning and you're a nobody. You're living in some slum, aren't you? Dad told me. I'm living in reality, I said, my voice urgent. Jerome, please don't go to the wedding tomorrow. Just say you're sick. Go stay with your friends. Just don't be standing up there with him when it happens. When what happens? He challenged. Are you going to crash it? Are you going to make a scene? God, you're pathetic, Mom. Dad said you'd try to ruin it. He called me pathetic. I felt the anger surge, but I tamped it down. Jerome, look at me. I raised you. I know you. You are not this person. You are kind. You are smart. You are not a thief. I'm not a thief, he shouted, his face flushing. I'm a businessman like Dad. Dad is a fraud, I yelled back. And Bryn is a parasite. And if you stay with them, you will sink with them. Jerome glared at me. Then he pulled out his phone. I'm calling security. Get away from me. He got into his car and revved the engine aggressively. As he spun out of the parking garage, he rolled down the window and yelled, Don't come tomorrow, Mom. Nobody wants you there. You're the past. I watched him drive away, my heart breaking again. But this time the brake was cleaner. I had tried. I had reached out my hand. He had slapped it away. He was on his own now. I drove back to my apartment. Elijah was waiting with the final preparations. How did it go? He asked, though he clearly knew the answer from my face. He's gone, I said flatly, completely brainwashed. Then he will learn the hard way, Elijah said. Are you ready for tomorrow? We have the projector access codes. The police are briefed. Inspector Miller is waiting in the lobby at 8 p.m.? Yes. Elijah handed me a garment bag. Then you'll need this. I unzipped the bag. Inside was a suit. It wasn't a frantic, desperate ex-wife's dress. It was a sleek, custom-tailored black tuxedo. Yves Saint Laurent, powerful, elegant, severe. Put on your armor, Simone, Elijah said. Tomorrow you are not the victim. You are the executioner. I touched the fabric. It was cool and smooth. Thank you, Elijah. Get some rest, he said. It's going to be a long night. I didn't rest. I sat by the window watching the city lights. I thought of Marcus and Bryn, probably rehearsing their vows right now, probably laughing about how they had gotten away with it. 2 more years, and we take it all. They wouldn't get 2 years. They wouldn't even get 2 days. Tomorrow, the new Mr. and Mrs. Sterling were going to have a very different kind of reception. The wedding morning dawned gray and cloudy, a perfect day in Atlanta for a funeral. I spent the morning reviewing the presentation. We had timed it perfectly. It would start right after the video montage of their love story that Bryn had commissioned for $20,000. At 6 p.m., the guests began arriving at the St. Regis. I watched the live feed from a camera Elijah had installed in the ballroom. He had an ownership stake in the hotel. Gaining access was trivial. It was nauseatingly opulent. The room was covered in crystal and pink roses, thousands of them. There was an ice sculpture of Marcus and Bryn intertwined. I watched my mother, Carol, greeting guests. She wore a champagne-colored dress that was too youthful for her, beaming as if she had won the lottery. Yes, isn't it wonderful? I heard her tell a confused cousin. They're soulmates. Simone? Oh, poor Simone couldn't handle Marcus's success. She's taking some time off. I saw Marcus. He looked nervous but triumphant. He was shaking hands, patting backs, playing the role of the benevolent king. And Bryn. She walked in wearing a custom Vera Wang gown, draped in diamonds. Diamonds my company paid for. She was gorgeous. I had to admit it. Gorgeous and rotten. The ceremony began. I listened to them exchange vows. I promise to be your partner in all things, Marcus said, looking deeply into Bryn's eyes. I promise to support your dreams and spend my life making you happy, Bryn cooed. I was sitting in the hotel suite upstairs, sipping black coffee. Lies, I whispered. Every word is a lie. Are we ready? Elijah asked, checking his watch. The signal is live, the technician confirmed. As soon as you give the order, we hijack the feed. Not yet, I said. Wait for the toasts. Wait until everyone is seated and looking at the screens. The reception began. The champagne was flowing. Marcus stood up to give a speech. I want to thank everyone for being here, he boomed, holding Bryn's hand. This has been a long journey, a journey to find true happiness. Sometimes you have to make hard decisions to find your real destiny. The crowd politely applauded, though I saw some uncomfortable glances. Everyone knew the scandal. They just didn't care as long as the open bar was premium. And to my new wife, Bryn, Marcus continued. You are my muse, my rock, my everything. My phone vibrated. It was the signal. Now, I said. Down in the ballroom, the lights dimmed for the video montage. Sentimental music began to play. Photos of Marcus and Bryn on yachts, in Paris, on the beach, flashed across the huge screens behind the head table. The crowd sighed. I stood up, smoothing my tuxedo jacket. I left the suite and headed for the elevator. Showtime, Elijah said, walking beside me. Inside the elevator, I watched the numbers drop. 10, 9. My heart wasn't racing anymore. It was beating slow and heavy, like a war drum. The elevator doors opened on the lobby level. Inspector Miller and 2 uniformed officers were waiting. Mrs. Dubois? The inspector asked. Yes, we have the warrant. We're ready when you are. Give me 5 minutes, I said. I want them to see it before they get the cuffs. Understood. I walked toward the ballroom doors. The security guards Marcus had hired to keep me out stepped forward. Ma'am, this is a private event. Elijah Vance stepped out from behind me. And I own the building. Step aside or you'll be looking for work tomorrow. The guards hesitated, recognized Elijah, and immediately backed away. I pushed open the double doors. Inside, the music had just reached a crescendo. The video on the screen showed Marcus and Bryn kissing in front of the Eiffel Tower. And then the screen flickered. The music cut out with a screech of feedback. The room fell silent. On the massive screens, the romantic image faded. In its place appeared an austere spreadsheet, red numbers, and then a document, a credit card statement, name, Bryn Dubois, address, 124 Oak Street, my house. Purchase, diamond ring, Tiffany & Company, $25,000, paid by Sterling Ridge corporate account. A murmur swept through the crowd. What is that? Bryn! Bryn stood up. Marcus, fix it! Cut the feed! Marcus shouted at the audiovisual booth. Turn it off! But the technician in the booth was ours. He didn't turn it off. He turned up the volume, and then my pre-recorded voice boomed through the speakers. Hello, Marcus. Hello, Bryn. You wanted a family reunion? You wanted everyone to witness your union? Well, let's show them what this union is really built on. All heads snapped around, not toward the screen, but toward the back of the room. The silence in the grand ballroom was absolute. 300 pairs of eyes turned in their seats to look at me. I walked down the center aisle, my heels clicking rhythmically on the marble floor. The black tuxedo made me look like a shadow against the sea of pink flowers. Marcus was frozen at the head table, his face draining of all color. Bryn was clutching her napkin to her chest, her mouth agape. My mother, Carol, looked like she was about to have a stroke. Simone, Marcus whispered, the microphone picking up his shaky voice. What are you doing? I didn't stop until I reached the center of the dance floor, directly in front of the head table. I looked at them, the people who had been my world, now just small, frightened figures on a stage. I'm here to offer a toast, I said, my voice projecting clearly. No microphone needed. I held a remote control. I pressed it. The screen behind them changed again. This time, it was the email chain between Marcus and the private investigator. Marcus, look harder or invent something. I can't afford to give her half. The crowd gasped. I saw investors, men Marcus respected, men he needed, leaning in, whispering furiously. "Turn it off!" Marcus screamed, lunging toward the DJ booth. "Security! Get her out of here!" "Sit down, Marcus," Elijah Vance's voice boomed from the entrance. "Unless you want to add assault to your list of felonies." Marcus froze. He saw Elijah. He saw the police waiting in the shadows by the exit. This is fake!" Bryn shrieked, tears streaming down her perfectly made-up face. "She's jealous! She hacked the system! She's crazy! Crazy!" I pressed the remote again. A new document appeared, the falsified loan application for the Beltline project, the one with my signature clumsily pasted on. "Is documentary forgery crazy, Bryn?" I asked calmly. "Is bank fraud crazy? Because those are years in federal prison. And guess whose name is on the shell companies receiving the stolen funds?" I pressed again. "Orion Holdings Group. Owner, Bryn Dubois." I pointed at her. "You're not just a mistress. You're a mule. Marcus used you to launder $3 million. Did he tell you that? Did he tell you that when the IRS comes looking, they'll come for your signature?" Bryn looked at Marcus, her eyes wide with horror. "Marcus, did you say it was tax optimization? You said it was legal." "Shut up, Bryn," Marcus hissed. "Oh, don't stop him," I said, smiling coldly. Let him explain to our mother what he really calls her." Click. The email appeared. Subject, the old lady. "Marcus, just cut Carol another check from the B fund. The old lady is greedy. As long as we pay for her condo, she'll keep Simone in the dark. She'd sell her own daughter out for a remodeling budget." Carol made a sound that was half whimper, half choke. She stood up, her hands trembling so hard she knocked over her champagne glass. "Marcus, you called me that? After everything I did for you. I sided with you. I betrayed my own daughter for you." "And what did you get, Mom?" I said, looking at her with pity. "A seat at a wedding that's about to become a crime scene." Marcus looked around the room, his eyes frantic. He saw his empire crumbling in real time. He saw investors walking out. He saw the waiters stop to stare. He saw the end. "You signed the agreement!" he shouted, desperate. "You signed it! You gave up everything! You can't touch the company!" "Section 14, I said simply. "The poison pill. If you committed a felony, the agreement is null and void, and everything, the house, the company, the assets, reverts to me." Marcus's knees buckled. He sagged back into his chair. "And Jerome," I said, turning my gaze to my son, who was sitting at the end of the table, ghost white. Jerome looked at me, terrified. He looked at the screen, which was now displaying his own text messages. "VP, seriously? Okay, I'm in." "You wanted to be a businessman, Jerome?" I said softly. "Well, here's your first lesson. Vet your partners carefully." I pressed the remote one last time. A video played. It was surveillance footage from the company parking garage. It showed Marcus arguing with Bryn 2 days before. Marcus, on video. "Once we get the Vance money, we dump the kid. Jerome is dead weight. We leave him with the tax debt and move to Monaco. He's too stupid to realize." The ballroom went silent. Jerome slowly stood up. He looked at his father. The hero worship in his eyes was gone, replaced by a devastating comprehension. "Dad," Jerome whispered, "you were going to abandon me." Marcus stammered. "Jay, no, I was stressed. It's out of context." "You called me stupid," Jerome said, his voice cracking. "You said I was dead weight." "Jerome, sit down," Marcus ordered, trying to regain control. "Don't listen to her." Jerome didn't sit. He picked up his glass of champagne and threw it into Marcus's face. "I hate you!" Jerome screamed. "I hate you!" Chaos erupted. Carol sobbed. Bryn hyperventilated. Marcus wiped the champagne from his face, looking like a drowned rat. I lowered the remote. The presentation was over. I nodded to Inspector Miller. The police walked into the room. The guests parted like the Red Sea. "Marcus Sterling," the inspector announced. "You are under arrest for bank fraud, embezzlement, and documentary forgery. Bryn Dubois, you are under arrest for conspiracy and money laundering. No! Bryn shrieked as the officer grabbed her wrists. I didn't know. I'm just his fiancée. He made me do it. Tell it to the judge, the officer said, snapping the handcuffs shut. Marcus didn't yell. He just stared at me. As he was being cuffed, he locked eyes with me. You ruined everything, he spat. You bitter, vengeful witch. I walked closer to him. I stood so close I could smell his fear. I didn't ruin anything, Marcus, I said, quiet as a frozen lake. I just turned on the lights. And you're just a cockroach that got caught. They dragged him away. The wedding guests stood in stunned silence. The only sound was Carol's weeping. I looked at the head table one last time. The cake was untouched. The flowers were perfect. The illusion was destroyed. I turned to Elijah Vance. I think I'm finished here. Brilliant, Elijah said, offering me his arm. Absolutely brilliant. As we walked out, I didn't look back at my crying mother or my devastated son. Not yet. They had made their bed. Tonight, they had to sleep in it. The days following the wedding were a media circus. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution ran the story on the front page. I do not real estate mogul arrested at the altar. I didn't give interviews. I let the evidence speak for itself. I went back to my house 3 days later. The police had cleared it as a crime scene. It felt strange to walk back into the rooms I had designed. Bryn's things were everywhere. Tacky clothes, cheap magazines, half-empty wine bottles. I hired a cleaning crew. Throw out everything, I told them. Everything that isn't mine. Burn the sheets. Change the mattresses. I wanted to scrub her DNA from my life. Marcus was denied bail. The judge deemed him a flight risk due to the video-recorded Monaco plan. He was in the FCI in Georgia, trading his Italian suits for an orange jumpsuit. Bryn made bail, paid by my mother, who had liquidated her retirement savings to get her baby out. But Bryn wasn't free. She was facing 5 to 10 years. Her face was all over the internet as the jail-bound gold digger. A week later, my mother came to see me. She looked 10 years older. Her hair was messy. Her eyes were red. She stood on my porch, trembling. Simone. Her voice shook. Carol, I said, blocking the door. Don't call me Mom. Can I come in? It's freezing. You can say what you have to say from there. She shivered. Simone, please be reasonable. Bryn is terrified. She's just a girl. She didn't know what she was doing. Marcus manipulated her. Bryn is 40 years old, I said coldly. She knew she was sleeping with my husband. She knew she was spending my money. She signed the papers. She's your sister, Carol wailed, her grief turning into the familiar family venom. You can't let her go to prison. You have to drop the charges. Tell the prosecutor it was a misunderstanding. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a felony. If you do this, Carol hissed, you're no daughter of mine. You're destroying this family. I laughed. It was a light, free sound. Carol, you destroyed this family 20 years ago when you decided Bryn was the princess and I was the servant. You haven't come to apologize. You've come to ask me to fix it again. You want me to be the scapegoat one last time so Bryn can walk free? She's delicate, she's a felon, and you're an accomplice. I saw the checks Marcus wrote you. Consulting fees. You accepted money to help them manipulate me. Carol paled. I'm not filing charges against you, Carol, I said. Not because I love you, but because I don't want the shame of seeing my mother's mugshot. But you are dead to me. Don't call me. Don't come here. If you need money, ask Bryn. I paused. Oh, wait. She's broke. I closed the door in her face. I watched on the security camera as she stayed there, banging on the door, screaming my name. Then, her shoulders slumped. She walked away. It hurt. Of course it hurt, but it was the pain of pulling out a splinter. Sharp, then relief. Then there was Jerome. He hadn't called. He hadn't come over. I knew he was crashing on a friend's sofa because the authorities had confiscated the penthouse and the Porsche. I waited. I knew he had to come to me on his own terms. 2 weeks later, he showed up at my office. He looked terrible. He had lost weight. He was wearing old jeans and a t-shirt. No sunglasses, no attitude. Mom, he asked from the doorway. I looked up from my desk. "Hello, Jerome." He walked in and sat in the chair across from me. He looked at his hands. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I was stupid." He made me feel important. He told me it was better than college. He told me you were holding me back. "And you believed him because it was easier than working," I said, softly but firmly. "Yes," he admitted, tears dripping onto his jeans. "I saw the video. He called me dead weight. He was going to abandon me. I have nothing, Mom." He wiped his eyes. "They took the car. I have no money. I need help." I looked at my son. I wanted to hug him. I wanted to write him a check and fix everything. But I was the architect now, and you don't build a strong structure on cracked foundations. "I love you, Jerome," I said, "but I'm not going to give you money." He looked up, horrified. "But where am I supposed to live?" "I don't know. You have to figure that out." "Mom, please!" "This is the deal," I said, sliding 2 pieces of paper across the desk. "This is a student loan application, and this is a job application for the mailroom at Phoenix Realty. Minimum wage. You start at the bottom. You finish your degree at night." "The mailroom?" he asked, surprised. "Take it or leave it. If you want to be a man, Jerome, you earn it. Marcus gave you things to buy you. I'm offering you nothing so you can build yourself." He looked at the papers, looked at me, saw the resolve in my eyes. Slowly, he reached out and took the pen. "Okay," he said, his voice trembling. "I'll take the job." "Good," I said. "Report to Sarah in HR. She'll give you an ID badge. Don't be late." He stood up. He looked at me. He truly looked at me for the first time in years. "You're really scary, Mom," he said, with a hint of admiration in his voice. "I know," I smiled. "Now get to work." The trial was short. The evidence was overwhelming. Marcus Sterling pleaded guilty to avoid a 20-year sentence. He received 8 years in federal prison, plus restitution. He looked gray and defeated in the courtroom. He didn't look at me once. Bryn took a plea deal, 3 years in prison for fraud. She sobbed as the gavel fell, looking at Carol in the gallery and screaming, "Mom, do something!" But Carol couldn't do anything. Carol was living in a studio apartment, subsisting on Social Security, having lost her allowance and her pride. I sat in the back row in my black suit. I watched justice served. I didn't feel joy. I felt peace. The ledger was finally corrected. Epilogue. 1 year later, I was in my office on the 40th floor, overlooking the city. The Phoenix Realty sign on the wall behind me was a sleek silver and blue, no trace of pink. The company was thriving. We had just closed the Beltline deal with Elijah Vance. It was going to be a mixed-use development featuring luxury condos, but also affordable housing and a community center. My phone vibrated. "Jerome," it read. "Hey, Mom, just finished my economics final. I think I aced it. Also, the mailroom team improved sorting efficiency by 15% this week. Am I getting a raise?" I smiled. "Don't push it, but dinner is on me tonight at 7. Jerome was working hard. He was tired, broke, and humble. And I had never been prouder of him. He was becoming the man I knew he could be, not the caricature his father tried to mold. A knock came at my door. "Come in." Elijah Vance walked in with a bottle of champagne. "Happy anniversary," he said, "of the day you burned down the circus." "It feels like a lifetime ago," I said, accepting the flute. "You know," Elijah said, leaning against my desk, "Marcus sent me a letter from prison. He wants to know if I'll buy his shares of the old shell companies. He needs commissary money." "What did you tell him?" "I told him I only do business with the CEO, and the CEO is busy building an empire." We clinked glasses. I looked out at the city skyline. I had lost a husband. I had lost a sister. I had lost a mother. But I had found myself. I was no longer the scapegoat. I was no longer the fixer. I was no longer the invisible wife. I was Simone Dubois, the architect. And my life was finally, truly mine. Thank you for listening to my story. It hasn't been easy to relive, But if my journey can help just one person stand up to the toxic people in their life, then it was worth it. Family is not always blood. Family is the people who respect you, who value you, and who stand by you when the storm comes. If you are holding on to someone just because they are family, but they are hurting you, let them go. You are strong enough to build something new. If you enjoyed this story and want to see more justice served, please hit the like button. It really helps the channel grow. And subscribe so you don't miss the next story. And tell me in the comments, have you ever had to cut off a toxic family member? How did you find the strength? I read every single comment, and I would love to hear your story. Until next time, stay strong, stay smart, and never let anyone take the keys to your castle. I'm really glad you're here and that I could share my story with you. If you liked it, show me by liking the video and subscribing to my channel. Let's see how many of us there are. Write in the comments which city you're watching from and what time it is. I'm so curious to know where all you wonderful people are tuning in from. If you want to support me a little extra, you can also send a small donation. I share new life stories for you every single day. And now, 2 of my most popular stories will pop up on the screen so you can choose what to watch next.